So let's jump back about 6 years to that time when we were using massive cameras attached to awkward tripods and gorilla pods and handheld grips. I was actually one of those people. I was traveling as much as I could and posting it on my YouTube channel. But for me, I was always looking for that balance of gear that allowed me to document what I was doing in a way that wasn't too big or clunky, but also I wanted the highest quality and the best form factor possible. So it was kind of this balance between two things. And well, I think Sony's actually finally done it. All right, guys, so today Sony has launched 3 new lenses, all of which I feel like have mastered that bridge between size and quality that I was talking about. Before I dive too deeply into these lenses, I want to note really quickly that these are designed for APS-C cameras. So if you're shooting on something like an A7 IV, an A7 III, an FX 3, these lenses honestly probably aren't for you, but they will still work on those cameras, but it will lower the resolution and the megapixels if you're shooting photos, so just keep that in mind. The camera that these lenses really shine on are going to be like the A6600, A6000, A6100, and personal favorite as of lately, the Sony ZV-E10. All right, so with that said, let's jump into each of these lenses that they've launched today. All right, so the first lens, and my guess will probably be the most popular, is the 10 to 20 millimeter f4 Power Zoom G lens. The full frame equivalent of this comes in at around 15 to 30, which I'd say overall is kind of close to the 16 to 35, which is basically the lens that every vlogger uses. The difference is this thing is a fraction of the size and price of the 16 to 35 f4, or definitely the f2.8. So this lens also has a power zoom feature, which you can control via the lens, via your camera, or even this optional little handle for vlogging. You can change the speed in the camera and you can get some cool effects. I also want to note here that all of the focusing and zooming on this lens are done internally, so the length of the lens isn't going to change when you zoom in and out. This lens comes in at around 6.3 ounces. Not too bad. All right, so next up we have the 15 millimeter 1.4. This lens comes out to around 22.5 millimeters on a full frame body. And this lens is the largest of the 3, but it's honestly still not that big. The weight is around 7.5 ounces. Typically lenses like this are really heavy, like fast lenses like this. This is a 1.4. My 35 millimeter version of this is huge and heavy. This lens is going to be great if you're shooting architectural photography or if you're shooting video in low light, especially on a camera like the Sony ZV-E10. It's going to have great results. The other nice thing is it has aperture controls right on the lens itself. So if you want to shoot an aperture priority and do everything in your camera, you can, but you can also spin this little dial and set your aperture kind of the old school manual way. And last up, we have the 11 millimeter 1.8. Now this lens is pretty interesting to me because of its size and its speed. It's not as versatile as something like the 10 to 20 millimeter, which is great for vlogging, and it's a zoom obviously, but this thing, you're getting about 16 millimeter focal length. And if you're really into that blurry background, that shallow depth of field look while you're vlogging or creating short form content, this lens is gonna be incredible. So I paired this thing with the Sony ZV-E10 and I started vlogging on it at 1.8, and I mean you couldn't get a look like that on a higher end full frame camera without spending, a ton of money. I think the Sony 14 millimeter lens is like $1,600. So you're getting like a really high end look for pretty affordably. All 3 of these lenses have buttons on the side. They also all have autofocus and manual focus locks. So that's something to keep in mind. So let's quickly talk about who each one of these lenses is for. I think the 10 to 20 millimeter is probably one of the best vlogging lenses you can get right now in terms of size and price. I know it's easy to get caught up in the expensive Sony cameras that are out there, but you need to realize that comes with a higher price tag and additional weight and size. The quality that this lens shoots on a 4K camera like the Sony ZV-E10 is pretty incredible and more than enough for most people. So if you're just getting into content creation and vlogging, I know that the A7S III and some of these other cameras are really attractive, but I think there's a lot of features that those cameras have that the normal person would honestly probably never use. Like if you don't know what 10-bit color is, then you probably don't need it and probably won't end up using it anyways. So the 15 millimeter 1.4 I think is a great hybrid lens. I think you could shoot video and photo on this lens. If you guys are into landscape photography, Alex Stroll has said one of his favorite lenses is the 24 millimeter 1.4. He likes shooting at blue hour. And this lens would be great for that. If you're into landscape photography or into architectural photography, if you just like shooting wider angle video and vlogging and you want a good lower light lens, I think this is exceptional. It also has those rings on the side, so if you're into that kind of old school mechanical feel, then you should check out this one. The last lens is the 11mm 1.8. I mean, it's gonna be like around 16 millimeters, 1.8. You're gonna have a really nice blurry background. Very, very cool. Like I said before too, you can't really get this on a full frame camera without spending some serious money, and the rig gets really heavy. If you're interested in more of the technical specs and you really want to deep dive each one of these lenses, we're going to leave an article down below that will talk about things in a little bit more length. And if you're interested in pre-ordering any of these lenses, the link for that is down below as well. I imagine the 10 to 20 is going to be very popular and could sell out pretty quickly, so be sure to jump on it as quick as possible. If you've got any questions, leave them down below and I'll try to do my best to answer them. You can also reach out to me at Mike_Do on Instagram. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.